Greetings, y'all. I bet you thought I'd stop posting content, didn't you? After all, it has been, what, 2 weeks since I posted something? Something like that. But it's just that I've been busy, and I'm back now. And I'm Michael Romeo, and I talk about books. And that's why we call this channel Michael Romeo Talks Books. So, today I'm doing a tag. I was tagged by Kim at Middle of the Book March. That's sometimes difficult to say all in one sentence. Um, and it is the mid-year book Freakout tag 2.0, and it's 2.0 because Kim changed a couple of the questions, which needed to be changed. Um, and apparently, the person who originated this years ago is no longer on BookTube, sadly to say. So I guess it was fair game to go ahead and change some of it. Okay, so let's start right off with prompt number one. Best book by a repeat author so far this year. That would be Final Diagnosis by Arthur Haley. It's a book from 1956, I think it is. 1954, maybe. Mid 50s. One of his, I think it's actually Arthur Haley's first published book. And Arthur Haley is a great author. He takes you inside the industry of whatever industry it is he's writing about, and not only gives you a great story, but gives you a lot of information about the industry you're reading about. In this case, a hospital that's down on its luck, kind of thing. Um, it was a prominent hospital at one time, and now it's an embarrassment. And this new CFO, or not CFO, CEO, and they didn't call them CEOs back then either. CEO is rather a new term. Um, New head of the hospital, okay, whatever they call them, is hired to bring the hospital back up to its higher standard from where it has fallen to. And it's got a great cast of characters. Some you like, some you don't like, some you want to like, but not difficult to like. Um, and it's got a great storyline, great subplots going along that just keep you reading, keep you flipping the pages. And it was a really good book. And that again was The Final Diagnosis by Arthur Haley. Now, the second prompt is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. And for me, that is The Wager, A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder by David Grann. Haven't read it yet. I only recently found out about it, but it's a new release. And just to read what Goodreads has to say about it, on January 28, 1742, a ramshackle vessel of patched together wood and cloth washed up on the coast of Brazil. Inside were 30 emaciated men barely alive, and they had an extraordinary tale to tell. They were survivors of His Majesty's ship, the Wager, a British vessel that had left England in 1740 on a secret mission during an imperial war with Spain. While the Wager had been chasing a Spanish treasure-filled galleon known as the Prize of the Oceans, it wrecked on a desolate island off the coast of Patagonia. The men, after being marooned for months and facing starvation, built the flimsy craft and sailed for more than 100 days, traversing nearly 3,000 miles of storm-racked seas. They were greeted as heroes. But then 6 months later, another even more decrepit craft landed on the coast of Chile. This boat contained just 3 castaways, and they told a very different story. The 30 sailors who landed in Brazil were not heroes, they were mutineers. The first group responded with countercharges of their own, of a tyrannical and murderous senior officer and his henchmen. It became clear that while stranded on the island, the crew had fallen into anarchy, with warring factions fighting for dominion over the barren wilderness. As accusations of treachery and murder flew, the Admiralty convened a court-martial, to determine who was telling the truth. The stakes were life and death for whomever the court found guilty could hang. It's a nonfiction. I don't read a lot of nonfiction anymore, but this one grabbed my attention, and I'm really looking forward to it. As you can see, it sounds like it's got of all kinds of drama in it, and I love stories of the high seas and shipwrecks and mutinies, and they're always entertaining for me. So I think that's what's drawing me to this one, and especially then now that it's a true story, and I want to find out who was right, who was wrong, who's telling the truth, and who's fibbing. The Wager. It's the name of the ship. The Wager: A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder by David Gran. New release that I'm looking forward to reading. Number 3, most anticipated Yes, thank you. I'm doing that now. Okay, I'll tell them. All right. Loud bird. The most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And actually, I have 2 that I am equally excited about. So I'm going to answer for 2 titles for this prompt. The first is My Name is Barbara by Barbra Streisand. Her memoirs. Finally, Barbra Streisand has written her memoirs. And I have been a fan of Barbara since I was about 12 years old. And the Sunday night movie on television was Funny Girl. And I watched Funny Girl and I fell in love with Barbra Streisand and have been a fan of hers ever since. So now we're talking 50 years a fan of Barbra Streisand. Imagine that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to her memoirs. And the other book that I'm looking forward to that should be coming out shortly is Holly by Stephen King. Holly is Holly Gibney, who has appeared in 5 previous Stephen King novels and is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. She started out in the Bill Hodges series, the trilogy, that started with Mr. Mercedes and went on to Finders Keepers, and then finally End of Watch. And she was also in a novella in the book If It Bleeds, and she was also basically the star of the book The Outsider, which was a horror story by Stephen King. So now Holly has her own book. I mean, her own very own Holly book. And I just adore this character. She is a mess. She is the victim of many mental health issues, but she fights them and overcomes them, and they make her stronger as she does. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she does in this book, what she encounters, and just what happens. I really have no idea what the plot is supposed to be. But it's Holly by Stephen King. And if you haven't read the other Holly Gibney books, I strongly recommend them. They're all excellent. And of course, like I said, the other one is Barbara. My Name is Barbara, by Barbra Streisand. So 2 books in the second half of the year that I am really looking forward to. 4th prompt. The biggest disappointment so far this year was a book I was reading for June on the Range, and it's called The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, and I got about 3/4 of the way through it, and next thing I know, the characters are doing things that the characters just wouldn't do. It just didn't make sense that the characters were acting the way that they were. And I think the author kind of painted herself into a corner and didn't know how to get them out. So she just had the characters responding to situations in the way that they had it all the way through the whole book, and had no reason to now. And 3/4 of the way through the book, I finally just DNF'd it. I was so disgusted with the turn of events that, um, yeah, I was just disappointed. So, um, I DNF'd it. The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing by Marilyn Dunham started out great. Page turner. Don't know what was in the author's mind. Don't know how it got past the editor at the end, but it is what it is. My biggest surprise, prompt 5, the biggest surprise of the year was Since September by Sharon Hovey. It's a novella that I read, and Sharon has a booktube channel. She is a booktuber par excellence, and I will link her down below so you can check her out and check out her book Since September. It's a thriller mystery, um, and when I read it I compared the writing to two other authors that I like, Joyce Carol Oates and Judith Rossner, who wrote Looking for Mr. Goodbar. There's just a feel to the book that resonates with those other two authors. So that's Since September by Shannon Hovey. Favorite new author, debut author, or new to you author? And this is a new to me author. She's written other books before, but I just discovered her with a book called The Four Winds, and that is Kristen Hanna. And The Four Winds was part of a group read that was led by MJ at Reading This Life, and it was an exciting book. It was set during the Dust Bowl era. For those of you who are very young and never heard of the Dust Bowl era, it was during the Great Depression in the 1930s, and there was a section of the United States that just, the weather pattern that happened basically turned the middle of the United States into a desert. Nothing would grow, nothing, and there were dust storms, and people were literally dying from lack of food and being buried by the dust storms. And in this novel, the main character, Elsa Martinelli, decides to strike out for California, where it's still a land of abundance, and with her two children, to try to find a better life. And it's a page-turning story. It's a wonderful story. Story of courage, story of strength. Elsa is a very strong character, though she doesn't think so herself. But she learns that she's got strengths that she didn't even know she had. So it's a worthwhile read. What is your favorite newest character? And I just talked about it, Elsa Martinelli. I loved that character. Wanted to read more about her. The Four Winds obviously was a very impressive book. It gave me a new author that I intend to read more by. It gave me a favorite character, Elsa Martinelli. And I highly recommend it. If you have not read The Four Winds, please read it. It is such a good book. A book that made you cry, number 8. I haven't had a book yet that made me cry, but I had one that got me emotionally choked up. So I went with that one, and it's a book called Escape from Camp 14. And it is a true story of a young man in North Vietnam who was born in a detention camp and was raised there, and it was all he knew until, as he was older, uh, older being late teens, he talks to somebody who's been on the outside, who can tell him about what's out there, what exists outside the detention camp. He decides he wants to go live a life outside the detention camp, and he does it. He manages to escape, and he makes his way, uh, first into China and then South Vietnam, and eventually to the United States. And it is a difficult book to read in some places. Um, the treatment that was meted out in the detention camp, especially when he was a child and was taken in for questioning about an event. It was very difficult to read, and like I said, it got me choked up emotionally. I didn't actually cry, but I did feel for him. I did feel for him, and it was a very good book, a very worthwhile read. Escape from Camp 14. A book that made you happy and laugh. That was P.S. Your Cat is Dead. P.S. Your Cat is Dead was actually a reread for me. I'd read it back when I was in my late teens, early 20s. So that's what, 35 years ago, more than that. Um, and I reread it, and it was like reading it new because it had been so long since I read it. It was like reading it for the first time almost. And it is a very funny story about a man who is down on his luck. Everything is going wrong in his life. And um, one day he comes home and catches a burglar in his house and manages to get the burglar tied up. And they start to have a conversation. And the conversation that they have is very funny. What happens during that conversation, what happens around it, what happens just basically throughout the story is darkly humorous. Very dark humor, but humor nonetheless. And if you want a good laugh, you want a good piece of entertainment, it's P.S. Your Cat is Dead by James Kirkwood, who is one of my favorite authors. And I've recently gotten a bunch of his stuff from thrift books because his stuff's out of print, unfortunately. And I intend on doing a month of James Kirkwood that will re-engage me with him. He's a wonderful author. Number 10 is the most beautiful book you acquired this year. And I left that one blank because I really haven't acquired any beautiful books this year. They're all your standard books, paperbacks or hardcovers, and the majority of what I've gotten is secondhand. So some of it's been beat up, and I just haven't acquired any beautiful books this year. So, kind of had to skip that one. 11. What books do you need to read before the end of the year? Well, I have challenged myself and challenged others to read their white whale books. And if you don't know what those are, recently there was a series of posts going around about people's white whale books. And these are the books that keep getting away. You know, like in Moby Dick, the whale kept getting away. Books that have been on our shelves for a long time, that have had our intention to read for a long time, but we just never seem to get to for whatever reason, whether they're intimidating because of length or because of content or whatever the reason. They just keep getting away. So, for the rest of the year, I am reading my 4 white whale books, and trust me, they're going to take me to the end of the year because each one of them is over 1,000 pages long. So, We're starting in July, which this is now, with Once an Eagle. Of course, I have to finish the one I'm reading now that is still from March of the Mammoths, which I'm getting to. I'm into the second volume of this 1135 page book. Um, and I should be able to finish it, but I'm definitely starting Once an Eagle in the month of July, and that is a 1300 and some page book. So that's going to take me a while. And then there is a book called And Ladies of the Club, which is about 1500 pages long, and it is thick. And there's Dahlgren by Samuel Delany, a science fiction novel that is a science fiction novel of great length. And then there is, oh goodness, what's the fourth one? Once an Eagle, Dahlgren, and Ladies of the Club. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on the fourth one. But I have it, and it's a long one. So that'll take me to the end of the year. Anyway, I'll put it down here in the bottom of the screen when I finish and I look it up. So that's for the rest of the year. I mean, those books are going to take me the rest of the year to read. The best book I've read so far this year. The best book I've read so far this year is easily Before Winds by Kristen Hanna. It was one of the first books I read. Thanks to MJ for having the read along for it, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have picked it up. And that's it. That's the 12. This tag has been around so long and so many times, been passed along to so many people. I really have no idea who's done it and who hasn't done it. So I'm going to throw a few names out there. If you haven't done it, great, go ahead and do it. If you've already done it, I wouldn't be surprised. I want to tag MJ at Reading This Life. I want to tag Micah Cummins. I want to tag Read by Fred. And I want to tag the Grape Jelly Library, Flo at Grape Jelly Library. All of these channels, I'll link them below. All of these channels are wonderful channels. Go ahead and check them out. I know you'll become a fan of them. And I guess that's it. This has been the mid-year book Freakout tag 2.0. And I guess the only reason it's a freakout for me is those 4 long books that I'm going to read after I finish the long book I'm currently reading. I'll probably plug in a couple of short, very short comical novels in between just to break it up and lighten the air a little bit. That's it. That's it for this one. I am going to be posting more content. I did have a bit of a hiatus for a few weeks. Just a lot going on. And the lot going on has calmed down. It's become easier. I've started a new job, which was part of it. And it just, the new job was just usurping a lot of my time. But it's become almost automatic than what I do there now, so I don't have to stop and check notes and such, and I get my job done quicker. It's still a third shift job just like I used to have at a hotel, and I will now have some free time now that I've learned the job to plan my content and get it filmed. That's it for this time. And as usual, I have a difficult time saying goodbye to y'all. So till next time, au revoir, till we meet again. It's coming up. I am going to hit stop right now, and then I'm going to change costumes and do a second one. Here we go. Bye. Bye, says the remote.